Great. And yeah, just go ahead and put your questions, your thoughts, and I had a query for you all. If you can just let me know where you're from and how many years you've been working as a dietitian or a dietitian to be, dietetic student, dietetic intern, someone who's returning to the workforce from being out for a few years. Love to know that, and I'll look over at the Q&A at the end of our my discussion. So let me just make sure it is recording. And great. Okay. So let me just dive right into this. I am Stacey Dynamke, and I am a registered dietitian. I am also, went ahead of myself. I am also the founding owner of NutritionJobs, the online job board for dietitians and career platform. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your valuable time with me today, because I know it can take a lot of effort when you're job searching or if you're job hunting. And it just, any webinar that you want to see to help prepare you for your job search process sometimes can feel overwhelming, but sometimes it could be helpful. And I hope that that's what I can do for you today, is to help you out. So I put this webinar together because I have coached dietitians and dietitians to be for a very long time. And I have noticed there's like this common thread with everyone going through the job search process: not feeling prepared, not feeling clear about what direction you want to go to in dietetics, lacking some clarity, and not feeling confident about the job search or the application process. So I want to be able to address all of that and give you some tools. And so what I have for you today then is a potpourri of what I call my resources and services that I have on my website on NutritionJobs, both free and also paid services. I have career articles, resources, downloads, checklists, and then of course I have a bunch of courses, and I'll share all that stuff later. So, but I just wanted to give you this potpourri of what I think is beneficial, and give you sort of a head start, sort of like a little starter kit to getting going, and also knowing what it's like to work with me. Again, free or paid services. Plus, I really love connecting with people. As you know, running a website, it's like you're working in a vacuum. You're working by yourself. You have no idea. And there's this huge tribe of people that are connected with NutritionJobs. And I just find these webinars like a really fun way for me to be able to do that. So that's another reason why I do this. Okay, let me move to the next slide. Sometimes I get this little delay. There we go. Let me move up a little bit more. Okay, so in the next couple minutes, I'm going to be highlighting what I think are the key elements for your next steps in getting a job, or a new job for the first time, for the 5th time, whether you're an intern or a seasoned dietitian who's been working for 20 years. I'm interested in boosting your career, to boost your opportunities by giving you tools to be successful so that you can focus on your craft, which is nutrition. And so not having the details of having to look up, how to best craft your resume or LinkedIn profile, I've compiled all that for you. I've discovered over the years that a wavering sense of self-confidence or self-doubt can really get in the way of getting ahead. And you may not even be aware of it, but it's like this feeling of inadequate, or feeling overly anxious for whether it's a job interview or even wanting to apply for jobs. Sometimes you're feeling so inadequate that you don't even actually apply. You don't even put yourself out there. So, or just feeling fearful of making big leaps and big steps that you're actually qualified for. So, plus I just want to give you a space where we can, as a profession, boost the entire profession. So if one person's making more money in our profession, then that just sort of paves the way for the rest of us, because we've really put ourselves out there and showing how qualified we are. So I'm going to give you 5 strategies to boost your dietetic career, 4 techniques to strengthen your confidence, 3 ways to optimize your professional profile. And this is the outline of what I want to cover. The first one is exploring our career direction, talking about building relationships, boosting your professional profile with an all-star LinkedIn profile. I'll just highlight a few areas that are important there. Same thing with a modern winning resume. I'll highlight one element that I think is really important. And then mastering dietetic job interviewing with some know-how tips and practice. And I also think it's important to, under number 4 here, is to make it happen, planning for it to actually happen. And then we'll talk about some confidence boosters, how to find your voice, how to do self-care, and to just generally enhance your skills. So just a quick note about me. As you know, I'm the founder of NutritionJobs. I've had this website now for 20 years. I'm super excited, and I love doing it. But I've had a really big, a big dietetic career prior to developing NutritionJobs and while having it as well. So I've had many years of recruiting and resume reviewing, resume crafting. I've worked as a clinical nutrition manager, clinical dietitian, outpatient dietitian, food writer, research dietitian, and I've recruited and hired dietitians, diet techs, intern students. I've also been on the other side of the desk applying for and creating my own dietetic job opportunities. So I bring to you over 25 years of experience. I think it's actually more than 25 years, but I bring to you many years of experience. And I can also offer you, though, the expertise of experienced dietetic recruiters who contributed to a guide that I wrote, a resume guide, and that's what a lot of this is pulled from. So I've interviewed lots of people, lots of employers, recruiters, hiring managers, and so I'm able to pass all of that along to you. I'm going to share one more resource with you, and this will pop up in a second. I always have this delay with my slides. There it is. Marie Ferguson of Dietitian Connection and I put together 2 wonderful webinars for the Academy of Dietetics, and they now live on the lifelong learning element of the website. So we did a dietitian career hack on your resume and on interviewing, and I'm going to be giving an upcoming webinar for Marie on interviewing at the end of August. I'll send a link to that so that you can sign up for that. That's a free webinar that's coming up. And then we were also featured in the March 2020 edition of Food Nutrition Magazine, where sort of highlights some of the stuff that we talk about in both those webinars, and a lot of it what I'll be sharing with you as well today. All right, so let's start with the obvious. The first step is understanding where you want to go, exploring what is interesting to you. I mentioned that I've got a resume guide, and in there I have clarity worksheets that you can use to sort of hone in on ideas of what you want to do. This is just the first page, just the first section I thought I would talk a little bit about, but the actual worksheet in the resume guide is a 4-step clarity worksheet you can use to help consider where your passions and your skills and your goals align so that you can have a real interesting, a real job. And let me just walk you through a couple bits of that. So the first part of this, I think this is a really good exercise to do regardless of where you're at in your career, whether you want a new job, where you like your new job, but you just want to update your professional profile. If you want to think about how you want to, what direction you want to go into your current job, even if you're completely happy, I think this is an important thing to do. I know it's a little hard to see in this slide, but I can give you some more on this as well. So start thinking, it's a little exercise. You start thinking about what attributes you have that your coworkers have identified, said to you casually or formally in a performance evaluation, your boss, your hiring manager. What are the top words that they would use to describe you as an employee, as a professional? Maybe you're a good listener, maybe you're a good communicator, maybe you're a good writer, maybe you're especially adept at working with patients' family members. Maybe you have like this unique craft about that. Maybe if you're working in clinical, you're really good about working with the interdisciplinary team. What is it about you that other people see that they've identified that maybe it's not your favorite thing to do, but what is it that they have identified that you're really good at? So you put that in one column, and then you think about in another column what you like to do. What are you drawn to do? What is meaningful to you? What sparks your joy or interest? It can be you can actually put down job duties. You can put down areas of interest. I wouldn't get so hung up on writing down like a job title, because job titles they're not always clear, and they don't always illustrate what it is that the duties are for that job. Think about what types of podcasts you listen to. Think about the types of books. You've heard all this before. This is not anything new that I've developed. But what magazines, what Netflix shows do you like to watch? Hopefully it's not true crime. Go into that. I love British murder mysteries, but of course I'm not having a career as a detective, but rather a dietitian, which is kind of like a detective work in a way. But this is just one step in the career clarity worksheet that you can go through. There are a couple other dietitians that really do a great job at this. Allison Reardon with Roots and Rise Academy. She's on Instagram. And also Susan Stalkey. She has a website called NutriGig. I've got a discount, I think, actually, and I will send that along for you too. She's got some really great career clarity mentorship programs, or just even a 1-hour session with her. I can help with that too, but these people are really good at it, and that's what they make their business. So I highly recommend that. Let's see, this should move on to the next thing. So then there we go. I have to like send it off a couple of seconds before I'm ready to actually go to the next slide because of the delay. All right, the next topic I want to talk about, once you've got career clarity sort of in your mind, is building relationships, and building relationships on a daily basis. I know this sounds painful, but building relationships comes in a lot of different forms. There's relationships you have with other dietitians or other professionals in your field, but you just want to increase your network, which increases your network of opportunity. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that. You can engage with people on social media, Instagram, Facebook. It's really funny how over the years, between LinkedIn, between Instagram, between Facebook groups, my own LinkedIn groups, I've really gotten connected with a lot of people that I wouldn't normally have been connected with. And I see them once a year at FENCI, which is really our Academy's annual conference, which is really fun. So engaging with people helps create this network, obviously. And then also making connections on LinkedIn. I have a whole course on why to do that and how to do that. But in general, you just want to make a lot of connections there, and your connections start to build exponentially once you get going. So that's just something kind of a consideration to have. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute here. Conferences, which are not on our agenda now, but they will. We'll eventually get back to that. Same thing with meetings. Whether that's local meetings, dietetic meetings of your local chapter, your state chapter, meetups from different dietetic practice groups like Nutrition Entrepreneurs or SCAN or whatever it might be. Just ways of connecting with other dietitians. Obviously, dietitians in your own town. That's a great connection. Sometimes it's easier to connect online as well. But the other thing is just calling out people. I have this funny thing. I don't enjoy networking. It's no big secret, but I don't enjoy it, but I do it because I understand the value of it. I know how important it is, and I know the value of it. So I put number 5 and number 6, calling up people and doing informational interviews here together, because I oftentimes will want to connect with a person, and I'll instead of feeling awkward about trying to create some connection with them, I'll actually create an article that I want to interview them for for this article. So so I reverse engineer a conversation with somebody and use the, I'm interviewing you for an article as a way to connect with somebody. I do actually end up writing that article and publish it, but I think it's easier for me to reverse engineer it that way. It's not always so natural for me just to call up somebody. But for informational interviewing, the same idea. You want to connect with somebody perhaps on social media, but you're just not super comfortable with them about that. So another thing is planning for all of these connections to happen, planning for all the networking. I offer the little free weekly and monthly planners on my site. I've got a planning party course now on NutritionJobs on the learning link on top of the nav bar that you can go to and download all of these. But the reason I bring them up is that on here it says networking, like what's your plan for networking? What's your plan to connect? So I obviously have jobs on my job board, but really the best way to get a job, so you can learn about jobs on my site and other sites, but you can actually get the job by networking. And it's just a way, you're just a reference for somebody. So networking is super, super important. I understand it can be painful for some. It's fun for a lot of people, but for some people, it's not always that fun. And so I appreciate that. And that's why I put it on your planner, make it happen. All right, let's go into now my area, my specialty, and that is boosting your professional profile, your professional story. And there's lots of juicy bits to this. And this comes from sort of my perspective on writing a modern winning resume, writing your all-star LinkedIn profile, and mastering the dietetic job interviewing process as well. So let's go into writing the modern winning resume. And the first, there's 5 things I want to talk about with your resume. So here I'm getting into some juicy details. So the first thing you want is your contact information to be really, really clear. And you might think that's kind of a silly thing to bring up, but honestly, I'm still finding that the contact information oftentimes is in a font color that's hard to read. It might be a yellow. Some recruiters print out those resumes, so you have to be mindful of that. Just keep it, dark blue if you want color, or just charcoals or blacks, or something that can be easily read, and a font size that is big enough. I usually recommend around, well, you can decide for yourself, but around 16 or so is a good number. Include your credentials in there. Also include your contact information, your phone number, not your work number and not your work email address. Include an appropriate email address and a mobile number that has a professional outgoing message. So that you probably already know that, but I think it's super important to just bring that up again. The other thing is I recommend is that you have a summary of qualifications in there. And this is just a brief little overview of who you are, what you've done, and where you're going. Just a brief little summary of your professional self. The next area that I recommend is for the modern resume is having what I call the quantifiable work experience. So part of the new resume, the modern resume, is to not have a lot of duties listed in your work section, but include your work experience that you've done that has made you valuable, that has made you unique, and include a lot of action words and not inaction verbs and not invisible verbs. So let me just point out here. So you want to list your current company, your city, and your state, and then the time that you spent there. You can organize it any way you want to, but I think the simplest is the better, because the recruiter is looking at this ever so quickly, and you don't want them to have to decipher through stuff. You just want them to be able to just like find it right away. So the current company, and then your job title. So then you'll have like bullet points, or you can have it in paragraph form as well. But if you have bullet points, the very first thing you want is to talk about is your scope of job, so people understand, especially if it's a unique type of a job. What were your summary of responsibilities? Not too much. And then go right into quantifiable work success. You can have several of them. You can have 2, 3, 4. The older the job, the fewer bullet points you want to have, or the ones that are most pertinent to the job that you're interviewing for, or that you're gunning for. Those are the ones that can have more quantifiable work experience. So here's an example of one of those bullet points. And again, it's, you want to start off with an action verb, and you want to include any amount of quantifiable outcomes or percentages or dollars or time periods, or and then just a brief explanation about that accomplishment. So generated 2,500 online coupon retrieval consumer engagements with supreme romaine lettuce with a dedicated Facebook Live event, sponsorship segments over a 7-day period. So you've like shown what it is that you've done and how you did it. Moving on to the next 2 elements that I believe are the foundation to your resume is having relevant skills there. You can list them by bullet points. You can list them as comma separated values. You can list them in sentence format where you say proficient in Excel or SPSS or whatever it is, and then experience with, you can say you're an expert at something, or you can just say that you've got knowledge of something. Those are just the important things. The last thing I just went ahead but before I go on to All-Star LinkedIn profile, make a ritual of updating your resume. I try to update it monthly. Just take a look at it. It's really funny. Even me, I look at my resume a lot and I still see like, oh, what's that comma doing there? Or I forgot to add this, or I just did a talk, or I just did a webinar. I didn't add that. So you're just making sure that your resume is up to date and that it's aligned with your LinkedIn profile. So let's talk a little bit then about your LinkedIn profile. And if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you get one, and then you can add that to your resume, your little URL for your LinkedIn profile, so they can go back to that, because your LinkedIn profile can be an extension of your resume. It will have a lot more information in there because you don't have too much geography or real estate to work with on your resume, but your LinkedIn profile, you could put all kinds of stuff in there. Anyway, you want to get what they call all-star status. That means that you have completed at least 7 of the steps that they require to complete. And when you do that, you pass a threshold that increases your chances of being found and searched for by either recruiters, other dietitians, other people outside, any way that you can promote yourself or your business or your job opportunities. So there are 7 steps that they want you to complete. One is having a profile picture in there, having your work experience. You need 2, they'll walk you through like how to do that. They start out your skills, your summary section, which I'll go over in detail, your industry and location, education, and then you need to have 50 connections for you to get all-star status. And so, like I said, once you start adding connections, they'll start building. You don't want to do too many reach outs in one day, or you get flagged by LinkedIn, but you can reach out to places that you've worked at before, schools that you've been to before. All right, so the one area that I really want to emphasize is your summary section. They're changing the name to about, and so your profile might already say about. They go through this implementation process that takes a little while, and so some people's will say summary, some people's will say about. Essentially, this is 2,000 characters of information about yourself that you can include. They call it your elevator pitch, but I always laugh at that because it's a really big section, and it's like this expansion of what your summary of qualifications would be, or your little media kit, or whatever it might be. And so I always laugh when they say your elevator pitch, and I think, like, what kind of elevator is that? It's like some huge skyscraper in Dubai or something where you're getting into that elevator. But essentially, this is a really key part. You can talk about who you are, what service you can provide, where you've been, and you can also include some calls to action on your about section. So maybe that's a link back to your website, or maybe you're offering services as a side hustle, or you can showcase some of your services that you've done. Maybe you like to do writing. You can showcase some of that. Even if you're an intern student, or just a few years out, or many years out, there's lots of opportunity to showcase what your services are and what you've done and what you can do. So as it moves on to the next one, you can see what my summary looks like. Actually, I just changed mine. It's always changing. That's another great thing about this, is that it's always changing. I change my headline all the time. That's that thing under your name. That doesn't have to be just your work experience. It can be any kind of popping piece of information, because that shows up everywhere. So this is my about section. Like I said, it changes all the time. I think I've added some more links in there to different courses that I have. All right, the next area that I want to talk about related to your professional profile is job interviewing. And I think job interviewing takes a lot of practice. And so think about how you want to guide your answers. And this is like what I really want to bring home to you right now, is that practicing your answers, practicing them on a recorder. I think recording works better than just standing in front of a mirror or just saying something out loud, where you can really articulate exactly what it is that you want to say. And so then when you go into the interview, when all this other information is coming at you that might be distracting, you'll kind of be able to go into a little bit of autopilot, not autopilot, but you'll be able to feel comfortable knowing that you have your material cemented in your mind and what you want to get across. But what I want to tell you is, make sure that your answers are all with the aura of positivity, talking positively about your old bosses, even if they were not so shiny, but talk about your old work experiences as positive. You want to be honest, but this is not a time to be putting your boss or company under the bus, your old boss under the, or current boss, that's even worse, under the bus. You just want to be positive. If you don't have anything nice to say, this is not the time to do it. And be respectful of your, of the interviewer and their time. Be respectful to yourself, making sure that you are able to look at what the job is offering. Most of these are going to be virtual, so you're not going to be able to see the environment necessarily right now, but you'll be able to get a sense from the different people that you're meeting with. Respect for yourself of, is this the right job for me? You know, this is your opportunity to not only show and showcase who you are, but also to be able to identify if this is the right fit for you. And also be respectful of your past bosses and past companies, and just considering that. Having some confidence before you go into your interview. There's a lot of different ways that you can create confidence, but I think the number one way with anything, whether you're giving a webinar, whether you're giving a talk to 3 people, whether you are going in for a live interview or a virtual interview, practicing just makes it so much easier. I think I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's just learning how to drive. She doesn't have her license yet, but she's out driving. And, the first time she always comes back all sweaty. And just last night, she came back from driving. She was like, it just gets so much easier the more you practice. It's like, yeah. And that goes with everything. All right. The next area is having examples of some of your successes. So starting with your resume, look at some of those value propositions that you included on your resume. What were some amazing quantifiable work successes that you had, and think about them as creating this little story about yourself and how that relates to some key skills that you have. Maybe they're technical skills, maybe they are soft skills like your writing skills or your presentation skills. Think about a story that illustrates that and can connect to that. And so that then helps identify. I just breezed over having a plan when you're talking about I'm answering your questions, I think about this little grid in my mind, 4 squares, the STAR method. You want to describe the situation when they ask you a problem, like a behavioral question, like tell me about a successful project that you worked on. They just want to understand like how you approached a task, and then having this example. So think about what was the situation, number one, what was the action, and what was the task, and then what was the action, and then what was the result. And you always want to think about and spend time equally on those 4 areas of explaining your example, and making sure you carve out enough time for the results. Like make sure you get the quantifiable endpoint that makes you so awesome, and why they should be just clamoring after you to have you on board. So always spend enough time. So I like to like mentally think about those 4 squares, and just giving 25% of time allotment for each one of those in describing an example, not spending too much time in the setup. You can get, when you're feeling anxious, you can kind of get caught in the weeds of setting up the situation and describing your task, because you did such a great job on, maybe you created a patient outcome, a handout or something, and you just love the way the hand ends. You're like going on and on and on about the handout. And what you didn't say is that it increased patient satisfaction by X amount, or whatever it might have been. So just make sure you carve out time for then the results. All right, I have this one section, and this kind of goes back into planning. I'm such a planner. I love planning. And that's why I created that planning party career module. It's free, by the way, so just join it. It's fun. Plan around your what you need to get done, but also when you're connecting with people, make sure you plan around peak times. I like to recommend to not connect with people on Mondays or Fridays. I think a great day to connect with people is on Wednesdays or Thursdays, Tuesdays as well. But it's just sort of being mindful about when you do plan, to make sure that you're planning productively, and that you're taking advantage of when you're most aware and you're most productive. Maybe it's early morning. For me, it's really late at night. And just take that into consideration. And I have to remind myself, because I do work late at night, and Sarah Kozik knows this about me. I do work late at night. And so I have to remind myself not to email people like, at 2 o'clock in the morning, because that looks weird. So I don't do that. All right. So those are the main elements. I have one more thing actually I want to talk about, and that's boosting your confidence. So this isn't really so much about the technical aspect of your professional profile or interviewing, but I think just being able to find your voice and having the confidence to do that is a huge help. And I recommend, like we talked about before, connecting with somebody every day, talk to somebody every day, read the newspaper out loud every day, read the newspaper right before you go into a job interview, not for the news, but to say it out loud, so you get your voice, you're not all crackly voiced right away. And then also like self-care, like exercising before an interview or before you're going to tackle some major part of your resume, which helps create a lot of mental clarity. Just taking that time for yourself, which some people just, don't give enough attention to. And I think it's really, really important. And then the last thing I want to bring up is, before you go into an interview, or before you do something that you're a little uncomfortable with, you can do the square breathing. I like, obviously you can see what kind of personality I have, like tidy planning and squares. And so about that square breathing, it's something that we do in yoga. And it's where you inhale for a count of 6, and then you hold your breath for a count of 6. You exhale for a count of 6, and then you hold that breath for a count of 6. And it really does change your breathing. Your breathing becomes slower, your blood pressure decreases, and your level of nitric oxide increases. And so that just brings more blood flow to your brain. So that's what I have for that on the confidence boosters. And I hope that's helpful. I just wanted to share that I have 2 sponsors for this webinar today so that I can give this to you all for free. A Sun Basket. I don't know if you guys have ever tried them. It's delicious. I've actually tried it before, and that's a home delivered meal service, and you can get it directly to your door. It's delicious. It's great. I'll send a little link to that in my thank you email to you guys. And then same thing with the Erin Condren's planners. You can customize them. They've got all different levels. I like they have these little soft bound, really inexpensive planners that I like to have. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is my different courses that I've got. I've got a mini and a maxi resume course you can take. I've got 2 of them there. I've got a LinkedIn, how to create an all-star LinkedIn profile. We only talked about one section, but and then I can also do one-on-one resume reviews and also LinkedIn profile reviews. And then I'll have another module on interviewing coming out. And then of course we have our membership program. We've got it's just starting up. We've got a few people in it, and we've just done it just for a short amount of time, and it's been a lot of fun where we have a lot of goodies, and that's all on the site as well. I want to, let's see, what else was I going to share with you? I think that's it. So I think I'm going to move over to, let me move over to our Q&A and see what I can see there and see what kind of questions. I'm going to put on my glasses for this. Okay. I'm looking for part-time work. People are looking for, and there's another one, and I've got an anonymous one. Oh, how to put your dietetic internship on your resume was a question. That is a really good question. So if you have been working for 1 year, your dietetic internship can go right into your work experience section, and you don't need to give it much real estate at all. If you have been if you just recently graduated, you don't have a job, then I recommend that you can go ahead and include that under your education section, and you can talk about the different special projects that you've worked on. You don't need to go through all the different hours for all the different rotations. They're all pretty similar in some ways, unless there was some unique element to it, like maybe you did some interesting thing with a communications company, or you did some special thing in the NICU with their TPN or something, if there was some sort of special call out or something unique. So, but otherwise, I think most people are expecting internships to be somewhat consistent. And again, just pull out some special projects that you worked on with your preceptors or the program director or whatever it might have been. So you can definitely include that. But if you've been working for a while, just put it right into your education section. It doesn't need to take up any more space than the university you went to or your undergraduate work that you've done. Part-time consulting. So there's a lot of jobs out there, both on my site and other sites, that address part-time work. But the other idea that you can consider is having your own gig, having your own side hustle. There's lots of dietitians that have great podcasts right now that talk about side hustles. I've got a couple articles that Sarah's written, and we've got one that Sarah Johnston helped update. That's a podcast for dietitians. There's a lot of information on my website under the blog section, so you can check that out. Someone asked, just came to the US, how do I do an internship? That is something you do directly through the Commission of Dietetic Registration, so CDR. They go to the eatright.org professional site, and they have all the information about the next steps and how to become a dietitian in the United States. So that's all spelled out. And I got that. And got that. Okay, any other questions? I think that's it that I have so far in the Q&A. You can always ask me directly through email. This is a great way to do it as well. And I think we are, so we're good. I think we're at about a quarter till. So that's about what I was hoping we could do. And if you were planning on spending an hour for this webinar, I'm super excited because that gives you 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes to pull out your resume and take a look at your resume. Sometimes it might just mean finding your resume. That's hard to sometimes actually find your resume. And so I always recommend like getting it out and spending a couple of minutes, whether it's the contact section, working on your summary of qualifications, looking at some of your job work experiences and volunteer experiences, and seeing if they're if they need to be updated and if you can make them a little more modern. There's another question about how to apply for a job without a license. I think that in California, so each state has its own licensure, but you can't, if you don't have a, if you don't have your, well, you can look at each job description and see whether or not that the job requires a dietitian, a registered dietitian. And then depending on the state, whether they have licensure. Not all states have licensure. I'm in California and we don't have licensure. So that's not, you don't need a license. In other states they do. So you go to what your state is requiring and where the job is and what that is requiring. There was another question in the chat. How do you get an inpatient RD job? Just look for jobs. Just look for just looking for jobs on job boards. There are a lot. I think to qualify yourself for that is your technical skills. If you're looking to be a renal dietitian, having expertise in renal nutrition, those are the good ways to do that. And making sure that your resume states that that is an area that you are skilled at, that you're qualified for, and then you can identify yourself as someone who is qualified for that position. So I don't recommend tailoring your resumes or having too many specific resumes out there for all different types of jobs. I do recommend one LinkedIn profile, maybe a CV that has like a full running list of all of the jobs you've ever had or publications you've ever written, having that. But also just having the one resume and not making too many tweaks to it, because it gets really easy to send out the wrong resume to the wrong person. But if you think you can do it and you're applying to widely divergent jobs, then you can certainly do that. I recommend including in your summary of qualifications at the top, if it's really well written. Employers really like that and recruiters like that. But just emphasize that that is something that you've been skilled at, that you've worked at before. I helped someone with a resume not too long ago, and she wanted to have her resume look a little bit better for some clinical jobs. And I noticed on there, she actually didn't have any clinical experience. I was like, that's kind of an odd thing that she wants to work in clinical, but hasn't had much experience outside of her internship. But it turns out that she didn't even include a job where she was doing clinical work. And of course, it didn't say, she didn't have a summary of qualifications. So you couldn't even tell that that was what she was looking for and going for. So make sure that the resume, your professional story, your professional profile is really illustrating what you're skilled at, what you're qualified for, and what directions you can move into. So that's it. Okay, great. So I'm going to end our webinar now. I will send you a thank you note with a bunch of links in there. Take what you need from there. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. And oh wait, is there any more? Oh wait, okay. Let me just take a look at any suggestions for a stay-at-home mom. Like to be able to go back to school, go back to work after having kids. Yes, side hustles. I think side hustles are great. Part-time jobs. There's a lot of virtual nutrition counseling jobs, not necessarily medical nutrition therapy. There's a lot of those out there. And if you're good at writing, or you like writing, or you want to get better at it, there are a lot of jobs. I have some on my site that employers post, but also on Upwork. There are writing gigs that you can get. Anna Reisdorf has a freelance writing for dietitians ebook that is super helpful, that talks to you about how to get into that. I'll include a link to that as well in my thank you note to you. I think if you want to increase your skills, there's a ton of courses that dietitians provide, other dietitians. I've got a list on my website, and I'll have to remember all these different links to put in, but there's dietitians helping dietitians in my dietetic, Stacey's career picks. So there's in there as well. or the other question was, do you need to specialized course to study in a certain area as renal? It sort of depends. I think, well, you can get certifications. The Academy has certifications for different specialties, including renal nutrition. They have it for obesity counseling. They have it for pediatrics. They have it for sports nutrition. There's a lot of credentials that you can get. And I do believe that Sarah Kozik and I have an article on that, is on my site someplace. It depends on the type of job. There's a great job with DaVita right now, and they are looking for someone who's just been working for a year. Take a look on my website. They will help train. You do eventually have to take some certification, but I think they will help you train for that. So take a look at that job, DaVita. Okay. And, so someone asked me how I found my niche. And so if you're a new dietitian wanting to be a diabetic educator or researcher, but they all ask for experience. So, I know. I think, there's a lot of PRN jobs that are out there. That's how I started. When I started, however many years ago it was, I worked at 2 to 3 different hospitals. I think it was 3 altogether. I wasn't working like more than 5 or 6 days a week, but it was really, really fun. I worked in a burn unit. I worked in a NICU I was they called it a CNSD at the time. So I was a certified nutrition support dietitian. I got that certification. I took the exam. So there's, that PRN jobs, don't discount them. They will actually have a lot more work for you than you can imagine. You can, if you want to do any sort of nutrition counseling right away or coaching, you can get into that. There's lots of dietitians that have information about how to get started, and that counts as work experience, right? Like that is you getting out there working with other dietitians or working with for yourself with clients. So that's a great way to get some experience. So there are ways. I know it's not easy. You can also, for a little while, maybe you can volunteer in a dietitian's private practice, even if it's for just 1 week, just popping in and either shadowing them or working with them, and that can bring up opportunities. And putting it out there on different Facebook groups, or also just setting up job alerts on my site, on other sites. There's always something. But make sure that your resume is tidy and appealing. Same thing with your LinkedIn profile. Make sure that is attractive, and that you're attracting people to you to connect with you and to increase your chances for opportunities. Okay, and let's see if there's anything else. Okay, I think I got them all. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much for connecting today and spending time. I'm super thrilled. I love doing these webinars, so it's really fun to be able to connect with you live. And I'll include the recording for those of you who couldn't join as well. And that's it. All right. Bye for now.